Aloha. Welcome to the Mr.G podcast. This is episode 23. Today is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. It's about 11 o'clock here, broadcasting from Honolulu, Hawaii, near the Chinatown neighborhood, aka No Man's Land, aka the Wild Wild West. This is where my cat feeding operation happens as well. Today, we have a basketball game here in Hawaii coming up in a couple hours at 2:30, a few hours from now. The Miami Heat are hosting the Denver Nuggets in game 3 of the NBA Finals. I thought it was yesterday, but apparently they had 2 games rest. That gives people more time to think, that gives players and coaches more time to have game plans. And for my prediction for tonight's game, this first off, this is not a basketball podcast. We're talking about basketball now because I love basketball, and we talk about what I want to talk about. It's early June when the NBA Finals are happening, so we're talking about basketball. But once again, this is not a basketball podcast. This is a podcast for everyone. And with that being said, the Mr. G podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen to the Mr. G podcast at work, while you're working out, while you're cleaning the house, while you're running, at the regular podcast spots. Spotify podcasts, Amazon podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts is the best place to find me. Just type Mr. G Podcast and I come right up. Full episodes of the Mr. G Podcast are uploaded in their entirety on YouTube and Twitter as well. So, my pick for tonight's game, knowledge is power. That's one of my favorite quotes. And the more knowledge you have, the better a decision you can make. It's a proven fact that intelligent people, they wear things like this on their head, but they also take all the information available before settling on a final decision. And it goes the same with sport betting. You want as much information as possible because these games are decided by, 1 or 2 points sometimes. Or the ball could just roll around the rim and roll in or roll out. Millions of dollars are decided in that fashion. And I can tell you that firsthand. So with the upcoming games, you get a 2-day break in between games 2 and game 3. That gives teams time to travel. That gives the press and media time to make little videos and interview the players and have press conferences and the whole shebang, right? So what that does in a series this close, the line on today's game, if I haven't checked it today, but yesterday it was Denver by 2.5. Now, normally when the line is that close, and there's 2 games coming up, going game 3 and game 4, both at Miami, regardless of what happens in tonight's game, the line for game 4 is going to be the same. Maybe go up a point, maybe go down a point, but it's going to be Denver favored by a couple points. Now, what I'm seeing in this series and these 2 teams, Miami plays the best when they're the underdog. You saw in the Boston series, they don't play the best when the ball is in their court. They like to be the Cinderella team. And so with tonight's game, I believe, as the line is saying too, it's going to be a close game. It's going to come down to the last possession. And whoever wins tonight's game is going to lose game 4. That's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting a split between game 3 and game 4. And like I said, knowledge is power. You want as much knowledge as possible, especially when betting on sports. So do not bet on game 3 tonight because it could go either way. The Heat could win or the Nuggets could win. Like I said, it's going to be a close game, and it's going to come down to the last couple possessions. However, whoever wins tonight's game, if Denver wins in a close game, Miami will win game 4 at home. If Miami wins tonight's game, then they're going to take the foot off the gas a little bit, just like they did in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics when they lost 3 straight. They're going to take the foot off the gas a little bit, and Denver is going to tie the series. There's nothing better for the NBA if the NBA 2023 NBA Finals go 7 games compared to going 4 games. If Denver had swept the Heat, then that misses out on 3 games. Each one of those games produces at least $1 billion in revenue for TV commercials. You see how expensive it is for Super Bowl commercials. Well, the NBA Finals is the same thing, except the Super Bowl is just 1 game. The NBA Finals, they have 7 games. So look for the refs to, favor whichever team they want. And I'm predicting a split in the next 2 games, game 3 and game 4. Game 5, Denver will probably hold home court. Game 6, Probably another really close game in Miami, but Miami will pull it out, and then a game 7 for the NBA championship in Denver, where anything could happen. So that's exactly what I'm predicting. And if you want to make money, I would suggest betting like that as well. Yesterday, we went over the top 100 University of Texas graduates. Actually, yesterday we just did the top 10, and then on the previous days, we did the top 100. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over another public Ivy League school, the University of Berkeley, and also the famous alumni of UCLA too. So those are two schools. We're not going to do every school in the country. I did University of Texas, University of Berkeley, I think is important, and UCLA too. We're those are the schools that have the largest alumni and have the largest group to choose from as far as famous alumni and notable people goes. Once again, a public Ivy League school is an informal term to refer to public colleges and universities in the United States that are perceived to provide a collegiate experience on the level of Ivy League universities. So, a public Ivy League school is supposed to provide an equivalent education as Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, which are the top private universities in the United States. Yesterday was the 79th anniversary of D-Day, and I asked the question, how many D-Day survivors are left? Because if it was 79 years ago, even if a soldier was 20 years old, that would make them 99. So from what the research I did, I've discovered that there are very few survivors, veterans from D-Day still alive, and the youngest ones are in their late 90s. But I did some more research, and I did find a 100-year-old D-Day survivor from Springfield, Missouri, which I lived when I was a very little kid, but I do have memories there. And he's 100 years old, and he was making a return trip to Normandy. He said it might be his last. So this was written by Joe Hickman from Springfield, Missouri, KY3. He says it was quite a send-off at the Montclair Senior Living Community as residents and well-wishers turned to show their love for 100-year-old World War II veteran Jack Hamlin. It's just an honor to be in his presence, said Amanda Edwards, the executive director at Montclair. I guess she doesn't talk like that. especially when you go to his apartment. He has medals and his pictures, and he talks about having dinner with the Queen of England. You're just sitting there going, are you serious? Honestly, it's better than history books. Hamlin is a living piece of history, and he left Springfield on Tuesday for his 8th trip to Normandy. While his last 7 trips have been extraordinary experiences, the first one was anything but, coming on June 6, 1944, as a member of the Coast Guard on D-Day. Known as Operation Overlord, the largest invasion force in human history is considered one of the war's biggest turning points that stopped the Nazi retreat out of Europe and Germany's eventual defeat. Jack went in with the first wave and did his job on... All right, I won't do that voice. Jack went in with the first wave and did his job on D-Day, was to tie a 25-yard line around his waist, jump into 45-degree water, and swim out to a triage on people after their landing craft or tank sank, said his friend, honor flight of the Ozarks, Chris Stark. And those memories have lived with me for 78 years, Hamlin said. And those memories have lived with me for 78 years, Hamlin said as he stared at the ground and shook his head. It's terrible to say you love them, but I'm so happy that I have the mind still remember everything. And the people of France still remember too, as Hamlin is treated like a rock star every time he returns to Normandy. Okay, I gotta stop there. This 100-year-old guy is not treated like a rock star every time he goes to Normandy. Hey, look, there's the 100-year-old guy, veteran. I'm first I heard that in my head. I heard that Cypress Hill song, like rock star, like. Then I pictured that 100-year-old guy like walking down the street to that song. And then I pictured my brain went to that newer rock star song on TikTok and like picturing that 100-year-old guy doing that dance. party like a rock star, fuck like a porn star. Like, oh my God, what is wrong with my brain? But that's such a stupid reference. Nobody's treating him like a rock star, all right? Nobody even recognizes him. All right. I had 212 messages from England, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and France wishing me safe voyage and saying they were waiting for me, Hamlin said. Okay. Sure you do, man. I'm just sorry. Yeah, you know what's going on, 100-year-old. All all of the veterans who participated in D-Day are considered liberators, said Dr. Norman Knowlton, who travels with Hamlin. So whenever they see them, the first thing they do is hug and kiss him. He says that he expects 500 kisses on this particular trip. I find the ladies almost my age who want to be kissed, Hamlin said. Believe me, I'm obligated to do it. I'm glad to kiss them. Oh, you Hamlin, you dirty dog. Among the groups greeting him at the Montclair was the Sons of the American Revolution Color Guard. The Sons of the American Revolution is an organization that was founded after the Civil War by Union officers who wanted to remind everyone of the value of patriotic service. Hamlin was escorted to the airport by a motorcade that included the Greene County Sheriff's Office and the Warriors Watch Riders, a motorcycle organization of around 150 members. Jack is a member of the greatest generation, said Wayne Hoyk, one of the riders in the motorcade. He's somebody that we love to honor, and we know there are very few of them left. As Hamlin gave an emotional thank you to a large group, members saluted him. Once inside, there was a slight glitch when the airline had problems processing his ticket because the computers only recognized the ages 1 to 99. Hamlin made his way to the boarding area, where the airline announced over the public address system that a special guest would be among the passengers. When the announcer explained who Jack was, the plane burst into applause. Such is the life of a 100-year-old hero who's still going strong. And with his 101st birthday coming up in October, I'm going to make it, Hamlin said. I feel real good, and I like to add a couple more years on that. I added in the kisses at the end. So good for you, Hamlin, and I hope you get your 500 kisses. I'm glad you're treated like a rock star. Try to not overdo it on the booze and drugs there in Normandy. But congratulations. Like it says in this article, Hamlin is a rare member of what is the greatest generation. And the greatest generation would be my grandparents. If they were still alive, they'd be about 100 years old. So people that are centurions right now are part of the greatest generation, and there are very few of them alive. That's the oldest generation. The generation after the greatest generation, if I'm not mistaken, is the silent generation. And there are actually a few members of Congress. There's the Dianne Feinstein, the oldest member in Congress, is a member of the silent generation. But as far as Google here, it says Investopia.com says the greatest generation refers to those Americans born between 1900 and 1925, many of whom fought during World War II. These individuals grew up during World War I and lived through the Great Depression and are often the parents of the baby boomer generation. So the greatest generation, like I said, my grandparents, they gave birth to my mother, and my father's parents gave birth to him, a baby boomer, which are baby boomers were born during the baby boom after World War II. So we have the greatest generation. Those people are still alive. They're about in their hundreds, though. There's very few of them. Then we have the silent generation, people like Dianne Feinstein, who are very old in their 80s and 90s, but some are still working. And then we have the baby boomers, and the baby boomers were born between 1944 and 43, 44, and 1970, 1975. No, about 1969, I guess, because then we have Gen X, right? Gen X, and what I'm considered, since I was born late 79, I'm a Zennial. So the silent generation born 1925 to 1945, This chart doesn't even have this guy who's 100 years old on it. Like they didn't even bother including him on this chart. So the greatest generation, they're still alive, like this guy, this veteran of D-Day. And then the silent generation is 1925 to 1945. The baby boomer generation is 1946 to 64. Generation X is 65 to 79. So you could possibly call me Gen X, the last part of 79, but I'm barely on that chart. Millennials are supposedly born between 1980 and 1994, and Gen Z is 1995 to 2012. So kids now are Gen Alpha, like kids that are 10 or 11. They're not in their teenage years yet, but Gen Alpha are going to become teenagers soon as well. All right, we're going to cut it short today. Join us later this week, and we'll talk some more hoops. We'll get the results from today's game on tomorrow's podcast. Once again, the Mr.G podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. So listen to Mr.G podcast while you work, while you clean, while you work out, when you're driving. Apple Podcasts, just type Mr.G podcast, Amazon Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcasts, and full episodes of the Mr.G podcast are uploaded in their entirety on Twitter and YouTube. Thank you for listening. Everybody have a wonderful day. For me and my street kitties, we bid you a fair aloha. Everybody cheer for all the street kittens out there trying to make it in this world. It's a tough world. Everybody's got something going on. You don't ever know what somebody has been through and what somebody's story. But one thing you do know is that everybody can teach everybody else something else, because everybody, each person out there knows something that you don't know. So try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but also protect your family and your loved ones. Everyone have a great day. Aloha.